the people of sake actually brought me into sake.
Back in 1988, this place was actually in Ginza on the main drag.
At first it was kind of soy sauce, it was miso.
To the point where it actually changed my life.
New Year's Day 1989.
Not just sake as a beverage, but all the culture and history.
Welcome to a very special episode of Sake on Air. This week, instead of broadcasting from our normal location, the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center in Toranomon, we have been invited to take part in a very special event, Aoyama Sake Flea, which is a biannual 2-day celebration of everything sake. We apologize for a little bit of the extra background noise this week, but we really hope that you will take the time to listen through because we were able to round up some really exciting guests and we think you'll really enjoy it, and it's a really special event. First up, we will be welcoming Masaki Yamada, who is in charge of events for the Farmers Market here in Aoyama. So Masaki will be telling us a little bit about not just Aoyama Sake Flea, but the importance and significance behind hosting that together with the Farmers Market. We will also be joined by Akiko Shibata, who is the president of Tokyo Sake Ten, a company that she started up in order to support sake-related endeavors, marketing and things of that nature. She's also the director of business development at Myoko Shuzo, which is a brewery located up in Niigata. We'll then have an interview with none other than Nancy Singleton Hachisu, the author of Japan the Cookbook, which was released this past spring, as well as the renowned 2012 release of Japanese Farm Food and 2015's Preserving the Japanese Way. With Nancy, we'll of course be talking about sake, but maybe not so much in the traditional sense. We're looking at more at how do we use sake in cooking. And when we say sake, things like mirin as well, and those offshoots of sake, whether they be sake kasu or amazake. We'll be talking about how to implement those in our lives, some of those misunderstandings, and the potential for those, both in a culinary world and for just sheer enjoyment. And with that, let's get started. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you
for inviting us.
I am always is Justin Potts, and my partner in crime for this round is
Christopher Pellegrini at your service.
Thank you, sir. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. There's a lot of good food out front. I just had a couple of very nice sake from Saitama, so I'm doing perfectly well.
And to my right, which means nothing to our listeners, is Akiko Shibata from Tokyo Sake Ten.
Yes, I'm Akiko, and I'm a founder of Tokyo Sake Ten. Is a kind of marketing company for sake industry, and now I'm also in senior management of a sake brewery named Myoko Shuzo, located in Niigata Prefecture from last summer.
And Masaki Yamada,
Yes.
down on the end of the table.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to here to this wonderful radio podcast. We do Sake Flea and other cultural events such as Wine Festival, Tokyo Coffee Festival, and furthermore.
Which is why we're here today.
Yeah.
Because we're here, I said there is a lot of fantastic sake-related events in Tokyo.
Yeah.
There are more all the time. And you guys have managed to really set up something that has really built a community around it. And we want to kind of explore that, which
Thank you.
We want to kind of share with our listeners and sort of talk about the state of that today. Before we do that, we like to start out with a quick kanpai. So we have brought some sake from Akiko's brewery.
Myoko's.
Myoko Shuzo.
Yes.
Myoko
The name
Shuzo.
is Rich Heart. It's a Hiyaoroshi sake.
It has a beautiful heart in the
does.
label.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you could do a whole series on these different hearts. Rich heart, pure heart,
Yeah.
dark heart, evil heart. You could do a whole series just on these. This could be fun. We could play with this.
Yeah, it's very complex.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me here.
Thank
Kanpai.
you. Kanpai.
Now that we're fueled and ready to go here, Masaki, would you mind
Yes.
telling me just a little bit about the farmers market, just a little background as to kind of where it came from and
Of course.
how it ended up
We've been doing this for 10 years in this area. We started from the building, not here, but in Harajuku, in the ground floor. We started from like 3-4 vendors, and then we moved to this area about 6 years ago, and then we started to grow this farmers market. And now we have about 80 to 100 vendors every weekend, especially local farmers, organic farmers, and craft peoples. And we also do the festival, food festival here, like Sake Flea, wine festival, coffee festival, tea festival. We also have craft festival and all those things.
Very
Yes,
nice.
we do. Basically, we have like 10 teams of the events, and we do like 2 times per year.
Okay.
Yes, we do Sake Flea 2 times, Wine Love, which is wine event for 2 times per year.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a place where a lot of craftsmen and producers come together and deliver their products to the people. Yeah, and that's how we connect the people, the consumers and the producers.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So, the farmers market here is arguably, I think it's safe to say, one of the more established in Tokyo. There are small markets around, but I think you guys have built a very strong presence here. Of doing it for 10 years is, I think, part of that.
Yeah.
But I think you've been very good at not just developing the market out, but really building a community around it. It's a very reliable place that people can come to and come to regularly. What's different about the farmers market here? What is
From the other farmers market?
from others?
Oh yeah, we're really focusing on building the community and connecting people to people, and also we're trying to bring new and young farmers here. So a lot of the one of the biggest issue in Japan, in agriculture in Japan, is that people who wants to start who wants to be farmer can be farmer, but then they don't have a place to sell. So that's the problem we are solving. And when people see our farmers market, when people who wants to be farmers see our farmers market, they can imagine how they can sell and they can survive by doing by being the farmer. And that is how, and we also connect the young farmer with the old veteran farmers, and they learn from each other. And I think that's the uniqueness of our farmers market.
So then doing an event like Sake Flea, like we're doing here, as you said, it's not the only event you're doing. You guys do wine, you've done cheese or something. Or
we're trying to do cheese.
Trying to do cheese,
Yeah.
working on cheese, wine, coffee, chocolate, craft, all these different things. And so then, why sake?
I was not the founder of Sake Flea. I was not there before when Sake Flea has started. But there was also a sake lover called Mikuriya-san who really wanted to do sake event, and she always go to a lot of sake breweries around Japan, and she really wanted to bring all her friend to this place to start a new event of sake to celebrate the sake. And that's how it started. Yeah.
What have you noticed about younger generations, people in their 20s, coming into Sake Flea? What is their reaction to sake and this entire environment?
Oh, I have invited a lot of my friends who have never tasted sake or had a bad sake image. Like, a lot of young people has this image of sake that it's something to drink to get drunk. But one friend of mine told me a very interesting thing. He said that Sake Flea has changed the image of sake because a lot of young people and foreigners are coming to the Sake Flea, and they're drinking sake, and it looks very cool. Young people and foreigners drinking sake.
Okay.
So I think that's the very influence of sake, like changing the image of sake. Yeah.
What sort of feedback then do you get from the breweries?
A lot of people are trying to export sake nowadays, and they're looking for clues and having more communication with the foreigners and have some ideas of what kind of sake they like and what kind of communication they have to take. And I think that is one of the good opportunity for them to talk and to communicate with other people. And that's one of the feedbacks that I had that I was very proud of doing Sake Flea here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not just only tasting our sakes, but also it's very fun for us. I mean, as a sake brewer, to find new ideas about sake promotions. For example, pairing with food.
Right.
So now we have some sake pairing events in our Aoyama Sake Flea events, and the idea is very, how can I say? It's almost all sake brewers located in very local Japan.
Right.
We ate Chinese. We have Chinese or Japanese traditional food, but there are not so many foods than Tokyo. But here is Tokyo, and there are so many good cookers and ideas about the sake pairing, and it's a very good, nice opportunity to meet the new idea using sake. Fan of sake, yeah, it's very especially about the Japan sake, Aoyama Sake Flea, I think.
It's the moromi, right? It's the mash tun. It's where all of the action is happening. You can learn so much from just talking to the first 6 people you run into, whether it be they're behind a table or they're a guest at the event or they're making food. I mean, it's a phenomenal mixture of talent and information.
Do you get a chance to go overseas and see overseas events with sake or farmers markets and things like that very often? Is that something that you've been looking at?
No, we've also, yeah.
I've been around a lot of countries: U.S., California, Portland, New York, other Nordic countries, Germany. But I've never been to. I always go to the farmers market, and I got so much inspiration to bring back and do something new here. But I've never been to sake events abroad.
Oh.
Yeah.
What kind of inspiration did you take from the overseas farmers markets?
Well, for example, they don't wrap the vegetables with all the plastics, and it looks very good. It's environmentally friendly, and we don't have that kind of system and ideas to do. So I really want to bring all these natural things to the farmers market, which looks good, feels good, and everybody can be happy.
Yeah.
And all those little things, but so inspiring. Yes, and I think the customers understands more about the producing process. Yes.
And developing that consumer understanding is a really important part, right? Putting the things out there, but in order to sort of create a new culture around something, you have to develop the education and the understanding behind why is it in the form that it is, being presented.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's something that lacks here in the farmers market. We have to improve more.
Looking ahead to the future, are there any things on the planning in the blueprints for future sake flea plans
a lot of dreams. What do you say, Shibata-san?
So I want to make more collaboration with other professionals with sake plus something, sake plus something like that. So it's so it's makes our capacity more and more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably where there's going to be a lot of potential, right?
Yeah.
Going forward, is how do you connect that to other
Yeah.
other meaningful things, meaningful activities, and
I want to see more new value of sake. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
anything in particular? Anything in?
Nothing now.
That's all right.
Nothing,
All right.
yeah.
You can think about it.
Yeah.
How about you, sir?
Dream number one.
Actually, I had 3 dreams.
Oh, okay.
Bring it.
3. Wow.
One, I want to bring more different sakes like Doburoku or Amazake also for the non-alcoholic drinkers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a really important point, is to have non-alcoholic beverages readily available together with those.
That's really also sake.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure. Absolutely.
That's one.
Absolutely.
The other thing is to produce sake from Sake Flea. I mean, I want to do it, but I think a lot of people who comes to the Sake Flea also wants to do.
Yeah.
So we have this community of people here. So maybe we can brew sake sometimes
Absolutely.
of Sake Flea.
Absolutely.
That's another thing. The third one
That's
is
a great
to do Sake Flea abroad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
And actually, I think that there's some interesting opportunity in that. You know, as right now, it feels like a lot of sake events overseas are sake events. The
Yes.
goal is sake. And that works right now because sake is still, it's not nearly as accessible.
Yeah, it's a novelty still.
Right, it's still
Yeah.
a novelty, exactly. So you're going out for sake. That is the reason you're
Yes,
going there.
yes.
But to be able to go and put it together with like a farmer's market or something like that,
I
to do
think we
something
have a
could be really
very
interesting.
big opportunity for that because the Japanese government are trying to export the Japanese culture to overseas,
Right.
and they have a lot of budgets to do that. And we have the sake brewery community, we have chefs community, we have the sake sommelier community,
Right.
we have the craftsmen's community, also the music artists.
Sure.
So we can bring everything together and to celebrate sake, and that would be very interesting.
That'd be a lot of fun, bringing the sake
Yes.
and then working with local artists and things like that as well too,
Right,
yes.
right.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yes.
That would be a lot of fun. Have you gone out and met with some of the folks, say, hosting large farmers markets in, Portland or these
Portland,
different
yeah.
places? Have you been out
Oh,
visiting there much?
not yet.
Let's take a trip.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's take a trip. Let's go
Yeah,
chat with
yeah.
those
Let's
people.
do the whole West Coast.
Right?
Yeah.
West Coast
That
tour.
was
All the way up to Vancouver.
Yeah.
I said, that's really feasible. I mean,
Yes,
I said,
wow.
you guys are onto something that is very
Oh,
much.
absolutely. That has very, very robust legs. I can think of right off the top of my head about only 2 people who wouldn't go to that type of event, right? It's the type of event that people would block off their calendar for.
Yeah.
If you've got these different, farmers market, good alcohol. That's a home run. That's a grand slam right there.
It is, it
It
is.
wins every time.
Yeah.
I said, this is feasible. Let's put that in the to-do box on the
Yes.
to-do list
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
and
yes.
let's see what we can do because that would be a lot of fun. I think that's
Yes.
maybe more feasible than
Feasible.
it sounds right now. That's,
Yes.
that's something we could pull off.
We are open to do any sake flea everywhere.
Excellent.
So maybe the listeners
Excellent.
may give us some message.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, honestly, a lot of folks who do follow the show are people who work in food, or people who work in farmers markets, or who are local brewers, say
Yeah.
overseas. A lot of people who brew in beer and things like that and those are the people that are taking part in a lot of
Yeah,
those. And so, if we do have listeners that are into that, questions at
Hit us up.
sakeonair.com. Yeah, hit us up. We would love to hear more about your experiences over there, and if
Yeah.
there's anything sake related that we could do, that would be a lot of fun.
I'm looking for that.
Very good. And with that, sadly, 30 minutes goes by very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So we're already, running out on time. We're not running out of sake, but we're
Yes.
running out of time.
Yeah, sorry, listeners.
Is there kampai again?
Yeah, quick,
Kampai.
one more kampai here.
Oh.
And any final words that you'd like to share with everybody, whether it's about sake or something you're working on or something you want to share before we sign out here?
Yes. Just one thing, 3 words. Come to Sake Flea. That's 4 words.
That's 4 words. When is the next Sake Flea? Do you know?
It's going to be on March. I don't know which day. Maybe in the last weekend. I'm
Last
not
weekend
sure.
of March?
Yes, but it's going to be on the website.
Okay, that's going to be right
Yes.
during Hanami season, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
With all the cherry.
Good timing.
30 and 31st.
Yes,
March.
maybe. Yes, it's
end.
fixed, but we don't remember.
Don't blame the sake.
Yes, I really want the people to experience this atmosphere and to meet a lot of sake brewers.
And that's a good time of year to be here when you're in that cherry blossom season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And there are a ton of tourists coming in at that time every year. So, maybe if we can reach out to them a little bit more.
Yes, it's
Bring
a
one in.
must-coming place.
This is a destination. I think it's become a
Yeah.
destination for people who live in Tokyo, and hopefully it can turn into a destination for people coming from overseas looking for some tasty food and beverage.
That'd be awesome.
And I want to say the sake makers in overseas.
Yeah.
Some days.
Yeah.
now there are
idea.
no just only Japanese sake
Yeah.
breweries abroad, but we want to invite someday sake brewer overseas.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of brewers who are brewing overseas
Yeah.
follow the show. So if they happen
They will be
to
very happy to hear that, I
right?
think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if they happen to be in town when we're having Sake Flea,
Best
so
press,
any brewers international brewers coming
Yeah,
over
yeah.
for Hanami season, for cherry blossom season,
There you go.
Yes.
You have been invited.
right? That's a formal invite from Akiko. So.
Yeah. Now I got a dream.
Now you have right now.
Yes.
Now hopefully we'll have more work for you to do here.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that is our time here today. That was just a quick 30 minutes, but we will be continuing again here tomorrow for 2 more sessions. Akiko, Masaki, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much, Justin, Christopher.
Chris, thank you, sir.
Oh, my pleasure.
As
Thank you,
always,
Justin.
That was a lot of fun, and we will be back with 2 more rounds, and we will be back here for another day of sake at Aoyama Sake Flea.
Up next, together with Christopher Hughes, I'm joined by Nancy Singleton Hachisu, where we discuss the use of sake in food, as well as the relationship between sake and food and how that makes all of our lives just a little bit better.
As always, I am Justin Potts, and together with me, my partner in crime today,
Christopher Hughes.
Christopher Hughes, welcome. And we are very, very lucky today to be joined by none other than Nancy Singleton Hachisu.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out for visit us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
We feel very lucky because everybody gets to enjoy your books and everything overseas, but we're closer. So when we want to see you, we can just give you a phone call and
I'll just jump on the train.
right and beckon you down to the farmers market here.
First time here.
I was shocked to hear that. I was shocked to hear
I don't
that.
get out much, I guess.
I say you get out everywhere, just maybe not to all the standard,
right.
not all the standard
Right.
locales. Kind of wanted to dig into a little bit about, of course, your new book.
Yeah.
Congratulations there.
Japan, the cookbook, yes.
Japan, the cookbook. And since we are sake-centric, we will be kind of delving into that a bit as well. Sort of how that relates to food and your work and your cooking and your discoveries and what you're
Okay. I'll do my best.
All right. As always, though, we always try. Our goal is also to support the producers.
Absolutely.
So we do our best to contribute
Yeah,
by opening
yes.
a bottle at the beginning of every episode. So we'll have to do that while we're here. We got a bottle of Kagamiyama from Saitama, which is where Nancy is based. So I thought it felt appropriate today.
Had you ever tried this brand before?
No.
No?
No.
All right, so welcome. So kanpai. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Can't buy.
So Nancy,
Yes.
you have been all around the world and back, it seems, lately.
Well, mostly U.S. and Australia.
U.S. and Australia, touring
Those are
for the
my-
book.
Yep. I've gone twice to U.S. and twice to Australia.
Okay.
And so I've been away for, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 days, 3 weeks, I don't know. So a book, it's like a never-ending, my books are a never-ending process of writing and testing and editing and then also touring. Like I never am not touring or collaborating. So, and the good thing about this book is that it's like 400 recipes, and so it's the opus work that I can use for all tours going forward.
I said, well, this book is, in some ways, conceptually, it's relatively different from the work you had done before.
Way different, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what was sort of that process like? As you're touring this time around, before you had pretty concrete, I guess you could say, themes or philosophies that really tied to that, whereas here, it's Japan.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, if I didn't want the Bible, but it's really impossible to write the Bible of Japanese food.
Right,
I mean, let's just be real about this.
Which is what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And challenging.
Yeah, and then also I had 2 other books, and so I don't want to repeat too much, but this book is a moment in time in Japanese food. It's 70s, 80s town food, actually, not farm food. It's kind of gorgeous, and there's lots of color, and there's a lot of shoujin roots, because a couple of the main sources, one of them was a zennan, I know, and a lot of sesame and ume, and just things from that era of plenty. And when ingredients were better. So, but the first book was more stories and Japanese farm food we ate, and then the next one was the preserving. A little bit harder to do dinners around the preserving theme, but I let the chefs do more more riff-offs. This book, all of the collaborations have sake as part of the pairing.
Right.
It's not all sake. Some places were all sake, but I mean, I like wine too, and I think that it's. I like the weaving of both in. I feel like it makes for an interesting pairing, but I recognize how important it is to really support sake.
Yeah.
Even though I don't drink it every night.
Yeah, that's
Let's
okay.
be real.
What have you found the challenge is to be pairing sake with food as opposed to pairing wine with food?
It's not that for me, because I actually pairing is not my what I do, and when I drink wine, for instance, I want that bottle of wine, I'm going to drink that bottle of wine, and I let the pairing to the experts. It's more been an issue of finding an importer or exporter, whatever the right word is, who's selling a portfolio of sakes that that resonates with me.
Yes.
And the guy that really just has it right on is Matt Young at Black Market Sake.
Right. Down in Australia.
He's my hero. I feel like in the U.S., the flavor profiles are much stronger and not there. I mean, I love Terra de Honke, but I also love Imayotsukasa, some really elegant style. So it's not like I only want the elegant style, but there's this in-between sort of heavy, sweet thing that keeps coming my way in the U.S.
Which I guess kind of matches the food over there, maybe
there you go.
More than I think it has a lot to do with maybe the cuisine.
Yeah. And that's just not my food.
Right.
So I'm going for and this food in this book. Like my favorite restaurant is Japanese, So I love bright, light, elegant flavors, not in your face, So yeah, it's more the issue of finding the right person who's going to pick the sakes.
Right. We say often that the sake doesn't fight with the food, that you can pretty much pair any food with sake. Would you agree with that? I think that's a bit of a liberal statement, maybe?
That's a totally liberal statement because the sakes I have in the U.S., I really feel like I actually don't want to drink them.
Right, okay.
There's still a lot of hit and miss. There's still a lot of logistical issues we have to clear as well, too.
There's logistical issues also, and I think there's this idea that it has to be strong.
Yeah.
They're looking at wine as the benchmark, or it has to have that bigness of wine. And truly, when you drink wine next to sake, then all of a sudden wine is actually I almost don't want to drink it anymore. So I do get that.
Sake is very subtle, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's all the subtleties and things.
Yeah.
Ingredients are a really big focus for you.
Yeah.
Recipes, of course, and all your recipes are beautiful. But I know when you travel, you bring. I've seen you in the past as bringing heaps and heaps of ingredients with you. It's
hard,
more suitcases of products and things like that. And you were talking about your preserving book. When you're looking at those ingredients, as we're talking about sort of sake related things specifically this time around, whether it be sake, whether it be mirin, whether it be koji, whether it be sake kasu, things like that. Are these things that are accessible to you? Are you kind of?
I bring them from Japan. Yeah. I brought Kido Izumi sake from my farmer friend who grew the rice for that particular one.
Very nice.
I definitely would bring rice koji and sake kasu, and I became like a total convert for mirin, and also Mikawa mirin is my go-to mirin, and so this book has a lot of mirin in it, and a little bit. I used to use more sake in the food, but I tend to use mirin more because this book has maybe a lot of miso and shoyu in it.
Yep.
And I always say, like, for me, it's 2 shoyu, soy sauce to 1 mirin.
Yep.
And I finally got it, like, just from my own cooking, that's how it softens the salt.
Right.
And even with, like, ume paste. I didn't used to put in mirin, but now you want to cut a little bit of that salt.
So it's the sweetness, basically.
And then also with miso. And I realized that if you're using really good soy sauce and miso or real ume paste, then you really need a powerfully good mirin to match it.
As far as getting good mirin, are you able to get that stuff overseas? Or you were talking about, Mikawa mirin, or do you find people have an understanding as to exactly what mirin is? It seems like pretty common in people's lexicon, but what people are actually having access to versus the real mirin versus what's out there on the market.
And even because I didn't use it as much.
Yeah.
It was like I would just buy some hon mirin at the Japanese grocery store, and that was going to be good enough, Yeah. Or I brought aji no haha, which is, a nice mirin, but it's just a different thing from Mikawa. And but the using of Mikawa made me want to use mirin. And then the same thing I think is with sake. If you have a really good, and I still don't actually have that in my kitchen and I have some recommendations from a very good friend of this is the best sake for cooking.
Right.
And I really need to get them into my kitchen because that's going to change my cooking.
Right.
You know, and I'm sort of really excited about going there next. You know, but no, I bring it now, but I repackage them in PET bottles because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
You know, I bring all the goma, the sesame oil because it's all from amazing roastery. But sake,
you know, a lot of sake aficionados. What we do is we basically, when it comes to cooking and using sake, it's really just a way of using up leftover sake.
Well, there you go. That's what I do.
And I ashamedly say that, but it's better than throwing it away at the end of the day. And I just wondered, when you use sake in your cooking, whether you were using a particular brand or a type of sake, or whether it was just kind of what's left laying around.
It's actually some very good sake that's left over in the refrigerator.
Right.
Because we live in Japan and we have periodic dinner parties, and so we have a lot of good sake floating around, and so that's what it tends to be. But I'm really interested in. I was told by my sesame guy friend Wada-san that there is actually sakes that are better for cooking than there's specifically.
Yeah. And there'll be ones that you can actually buy as cooking sake, but then there'll be sake that the brewers make that
the one.
would.
That's
and
what
I was
about.
wondering, when you're choosing the sake actually for the cooking, whether you have a little taste first and see whether the characteristics match up with what you're doing, or
grab and go.
Just grab and go.
Yeah,
I mean, using sake in cooking is still very much kind of unexplored, really, isn't it?
I think so. And probably the different nature of different sakes. I said probably the easiest and example is something that's really, really distinct. You're starting to see more people use, say, like a koshu or like a long-term aged sake that's been around, say, 20, 30 years, and using it in, say, richer desserts and things like that. Because it really is something very distinct, say, from what we're sipping on right now. And so you're finding some of those things being used in very distinct types of dishes as opposed to an all-purpose sake for something just having on there.
For me, I guess it's because, the sake that we tend to have is lighter or more elegant, and so and that's what we're drinking, and then that's what's going to be matching in the cooking, and it's going to be open for a while, so better use it up, that sort of idea. But I am, like I said, interested in this idea that some of the makers are actually producing a sake that they feel is really beneficial in the cooking, and so sake, unlike mirin, sake gives that light back sweetness, which and that is more like you have to. We're not talking about a heavy miso dish or lots of soy sauce. It's going to be really light soy sauce, like a smashijiru or something that's just lightly soy sauce salt taste, and then sake goes really well with that. So, I mean,
I don't know of any brewers that do you, Justin? Brewers that actually kind of making sake specifically for.
I do know of several actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send share some with you, and it's actually, and so there's a couple different approaches to that. There's you wouldn't want to drink it, but it's good for cooking, and then there's this is actually really amazing stuff in and of itself, and we're not adding any funky stuff to this. We're actually making a really incredible sake that is, and there are a few really interesting examples of that out there.
I don't know enough about the alchemy of it, but I would imagine that it'd have to be something, has to have some, I don't know, natural acidity or something that's going to, that kind of stuff.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of sake for cooking is something like kimoto or a yamahai, a really kind of like clean kimoto or yamahai, I think would work quite well.
I've had somebody in the States got, recently namazake is really popular, and got a bottle of nigori sake for the cooking. I was like, I don't think this is going to work.
Right.
There's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah, and that's a really important point too. Is I think you look at it as what are your base ingredients that you're using? Are you using soy? Are you using sake? Are you using miso? Are you using mirin? But it's not just a matter of are you using these things, it's what are you using of those things.
Yeah,
it's selecting the ingredients, which becomes so important, because the person probably had the best intention of the world when they selected nigori sake to use in cooking.
I told them to get the best one that wasn't too expensive.
Right.
It was through good intention.
Totally,
but it was there are very different things out there. And that being said, there's probably some really interesting uses for nigori sake.
I would imagine.
I could imagine, but it's not an all-purpose,
Right.
And so that's you kind of answered my question a little bit. Sort of,
I was curious as to what does sake do for food? Because, for example, and I think a lot of people, when introducing, the idea of using sake in cooking, they say, "Oh, kind of like how you use wine to cook food," and I feel like that's just a kind of a sad misinterpretation, and it kind of only leads to the types of things like, "Oh, it's like rice wine," whereas actually functionally it has a very different entity, and it has sort of a very different purpose.
Well, it's when you use wine, you either use it just to kind of, add a bit of oomph to the cooking, or you can use it to make like a reduction or something and actually make a sauce out of it or something,
or adobe, a stew,
exactly.
French stew. Mm-hmm.
And in British cooking, using alcohol, using beer or whiskey or something in the stews or the hot pots is very much a part of the recipe, and it's kind of like, it's just it's obvious, if you have something knocking about the kitchen, just kind of throw it in type thing. And I actually, in one of my other jobs, I represent a beer brand, and they use a lot of, a lot of their advertising shows them kind of like putting the beer in the cooking, and a lot of stews and hot pots and things like that. I'm sure the same thing would be possible with sake.
Absolutely. But the thing is, let's go back to the words.
Yeah.
This is really
words are important.
As a writer, as a cookbook author.
Yeah.
It is my job, my mission actually, to fix these words. And I also, since I'm helping this Australian guy bring better products to Australia, and I'm vetting what's going over there. And I have a say on what's going to be put on the label in the back. And so I worked with Mikao about what do we call it, and let's not use that wine word, please.
Yeah.
And so, and people are still saying rice wine vinegar.
Yeah.
And these are just like, this is a horror show, because it's just totally not wine.
Yeah.
No.
And so that's my job, and I keep going at it.
Yeah,
so.
it's really important. It's funny you brought that up, because actually that's what I was doing last night. Is I was in Nagoya doing a presentation on fermented food and stuff down there, and I actually used Mikao mirin as an example and I had everybody taste it. I served it to a whole bunch of local Nagoya people, which, for those listening, they're in Aichi. They're in that same prefecture right in the area.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was the first time a lot of the locals had Mikao mirin.
Yeah.
And then I showed them the form in which it is being presented overseas, and you have the same Mikao mirin just being sold as so many different things in so many different forms and all this stuff. It's such a shame, because you have such an incredible product that is just being really miscommunicated.
Well, actually, I went recently to Mikao mirin, and I've been talking to them a lot about this, because they came up in the 60s, 70s when it was a repackaging situation. Now, Yamaki Jozo was in that same era, and all over the world, they're repackaging Mikao mirin, but I keep begging them that you have such pride in this product, and you're making this most amazing product, that we have to get this directly. And so now it's in Australia, it's a little bit in the States, and I'm going to go to London next year. I'll bring some, not to compete with the repackagers, but this is the era. Bang, bang, bang. This is the era where people, people who are buying and chefs want to know what is this in this bottle. And it's not always written. Some companies do write that it's Mikao mirin, but not all do. And so, but that's changing world. And that's why, sake is doing so well overseas, that they're really interested in the stories and and so I think it's a great time. But we just in Japan needs to be sexified. So.
That's right, and obviously you need to turn these stories into English, into a language that people can understand. A lot of these are still in Japanese and not, usable as they are, unfortunately.
Which is where Nancy comes in.
Yes.
Well, I don't know as much as I should about sake, but I do advocate for it, and so.
Have you had any interesting experiences overseas when you're, as you said, with this latest book? Pretty much a lot of the people who are hosting you are doing those things. Part of their, goal is to present sake together with those dinners and things. Did you have any interesting or any eye-opening experiences around that?
Oh,
either positive or not so positive.
Well, Australia was hands down majorly positive because of Black Market.
Yeah.
And because I just asked Matt. Matt knows, he's the owner of Black Market. He knows that I love Terada Honke and Kido Izumi.
Yeah.
But I also just said, look, I understand we can't have that every single time. So I gave him I don't really often trust people to choose. So I just said, you understand what I like, you understand where I'm going, and so you can choose. And he had this really interesting one for the desserts. I think it's an aged one.
Okay.
And it was strawberry season when we were there recently, and went beautifully with the strawberries. And I'm not a big fan of the aged sakes, but it was really good to get.
Strawberries
used tactically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so, but I still think that the idea of pairing, when you just have sake on the pairing, I think it's a little bit much for people.
Yeah.
And so I really like the idea of, and especially I think that in the end people want some red wine to finish a dinner.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I think it's true for Japanese as well too, and that's actually where sake is starting to see more success in Japan. Is when people don't have to, in order to get somebody to try sake, they don't have to convince them to go to a sake place. They can take them to a place that has great food and a great
French
drink
food
menu,
and
they can have a beer to start their meal, a great craft beer, and then they can have a glass of wine or two and a sake or two.
The
they can end with
pairings
something
are
else.
amazing now.
Yeah, it's getting really, really exciting.
There's just one thing I never can have without sake is that's sashimi.
Yeah,
sashimi and sake.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
they do go.
Which
so
is
well
a trouble
together.
if you have sashimi at lunchtime. So.
Nice. One more thing I actually kind of wanted to ask you about is, so a lot of times sake and mirin, it often gets, this is in Japan as well too, it's used as a replacement for sugar.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And I think this is a really important point, and sort of what it does for cooking, but it's a lot of people tend to often just focus on, I don't have to put sugar in, I can put this in instead. But there's also, it lends something to it as well too. How are people sort of adopting sort of the understanding around that as far as how to use it? It's not just a replacement for sugar, that's one of the benefits, but...
Well, sugar is sort of a new ingredient, actually. I mean, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And there was natural sweetness like hoshigaki, dried persimmons could add sweetness, and sake. If people had access to it, or sake, maybe sake katsu, if that has, and mirin, as people got more wherewithal to buy these kind of products. But sugar maybe was easier, more accessible. You could just buy it from the supermarket and more easily understandable, and the bachans, they don't drink so much.
Yeah.
So they love to use that sugar. But for me, sugar adds nothing in my mind. I use organic sugar. But I don't think there's any savory recipe in there that uses sugar. It's all mirin and sake because it interplays with the other ingredients so well.
Right.
And sugar, I do, like I said, have a good sugar, but it's more multidimensional than the white granulated sugar, but it doesn't have anywhere the complexities or the after feeling from mirin and sake. And I don't always burn off, like for mirin, I don't always burn off the alcohol.
Right.
Like sometimes I use it straight, which isn't, I think most restaurant chefs would not do that, but
So we're talking about mirin that's around about 14% alcohol or something?
I just use Mikoa, so I don't know whatever there is.
12, 14.
12, they're quite high,
somewhere
aren't they? Yeah.
They have two of them.
Yes,
organic one, it's a little bit more treacly, and then the non-organic, but but you need sake too, because mirin has an inherent power. I don't want to say heaviness.
Whether you like the word umami or not, there are other subtleties at work.
Yes, it's there. It's actually there, playing quite an important role, and we don't have to use the word umami. I agree, but because in English, I mean, we it's not like we don't know this concept. It's just that we never really had a word for it. We never really had to give it a word. You go to supermarkets, they have like kind of savory sections, right?
Savory.
That's our word for umami, really, isn't it? So we know about it. It's just that we've never really been asked to kind of, focus on it before, and now it's becoming the cornerstone of kind of, cooking across the world. It is a little bit exaggerated, perhaps. But.
The funny thing is, like about 8 years ago, somebody I knew this guy who was from Seattle, John rally, and he was writing about umami, and then I chimed in and I asked around, like my husband and my chef friend, soba chef friend, and they had never even heard of that word at that time.
Right.
8 years ago in Japan.
Yeah, well,
and they
8
were
years
total
ago.
food people.
Yeah.
Food people.
Yeah.
So, but now everybody's talking about it, even in Japanese.
Yeah,
That's right.
it. Word travels faster these days. It's amazing how it's just in the last 5-10 years and
Yeah.
Well,
what
also
people
we're
pick up
talking
on.
about a huge food boom about Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, every single place I go, people tell me, "Oh, I'm going to Japan. Oh, I just went to Japan." I mean, it's the food destination.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be here.
Yeah.
It is. There's a lot to keep us busy.
But let's get the food better, please.
Right. I said. So we'll have to probably leave that one for another. That is a whole nother episode in and of its own.
It kills it, but
That's
the
it.
food needs some help.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. Everybody's coming around. Everybody's. I said, and it's places like this. It is like the farmers market. That's really really nice to be able to come here and be able to see. There's a lot of young people that are doing really great, really inspiring work that are really picking up the baton and running with it. And so to be able to kind of put the producers together with the sake producers here, it's a lot of fun. And I think more kind of collaborations like this are going to be take us to good places.
That's right.
So
I wanted to get your opinion, Nancy, about something. Like we've been saying that rather than pairing cheese and wine, cheese and sake goes better. And I know you said your kind of forte isn't really the pairing side of things, but just from your experience, what do you think about that? Do you think there's any truth there?
I can see that actually very well, because actually was one time we did a dinner with Justin at Sake House in Niigata, Imayotsugatsa, and the chef is a French chef, and Ikegami-san, and he paired the French food with the sake, and I can see how cheeses like even blues or goat cheeses or some of the creamier ones just are overpowered by the wine in some way, or even that the aged sake with blues seems like would be really a great combination.
That's a very popular pairing.
Just the lightness of the sake, it was such a great match with the food. It was. I started feeling like the wine would be so in the way,
right?
Because it was this very elegant kind of light and bright, beautiful French food, like only the Japanese can do. So.
Yeah, but it's an interesting angle that you've come out with the answer, because most people kind of focus on the fact that you get more savory flavors from the sake, and that kind of matches it kind of helps you to lengthen the savory flavor of the cheese, but it's more about the fact that a lot of wines actually overpower these delicacies, and I never thought about it that way. And so there we go. There's another tick point for sake with cheese.
Good.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, 30 minutes goes by really quickly.
Indeed,
I said I would very much like to keep this conversation going, and I would like to very much dig more into the food angle as well too next time around. So Nancy, hopefully we can maybe have you back on another one of these days for a full-on session after the next book. Can we say that? Can we say that there is something in the works? Is that something that
Food Artisans of Japan coming next year in the fall?
Beautiful.
If I finish it this month.
Beautiful. So
Hardy Grant, Australia's publisher.
Wow, fantastic. I was like, well, we won't keep you for too much longer then, so you can go home and make that happen.
Right.
But congratulations on Japan, the cookbook.
Thank you.
And it's been lovely.
It's a nice chunky book.
That is a tome. That is the tome of Japanese
plus.
cuisine right there. That is
beautiful
fantastic.
photographs.
And so it is very exciting. So thank you so much for coming out and joining us today. And we will be back here again from the Aoyama Sake Flea for a few more sessions. But with that, that was our time this afternoon, or this morning. Gosh, I don't even know. It feels like this afternoon when you open a bottle of sake at 11 a.m. No, thank you again so much, Nancy, for coming out. We'll look forward to having you on again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks again. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming out.
And there you have it. We hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Sake on Air, brought to you live from Aoyama Sake Flea here in Tokyo. As always, if you have any questions, please do reach out to us at questions@sakeonair. And of course, we would love it if you would follow us on whatever social media account it is that you spend a little bit too much time on, whether it be Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. You can find us at sakeonair. And if you like what you heard today, as well as on previous episodes, we would certainly love a nice review on iTunes or Google Podcasts or whatever it is you're listening to this on.
So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to do that, that would really mean a whole lot to us. And so that does it for another week of Sake on Air, brought to you together in collaboration with the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association, edited and produced in collaboration with Export Japan. We'll see you again in a week. Until then, kanpai.